Welcome to the Warband, a World of Warcraft podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Swaglock, and with me today, live here on Twitch, is our favorite host, Chicken. Dude, Chicken, welcome back, and also for such a cool episode.
Does it feel weird having to smile for the camera and not just like being able to deadpan like in your computer monitor?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I actually have to think about it. Normally, I'm just like, if you're watching online, you would see I'm just like looking down the whole time, thinking I'm not worried because nobody's looking at me. But now they are.
You got your pen and paper. You're like jotting down notes, like, oh, how can I respond to this? How can I respond to this thing that Chicken just said? Like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like jot down some notes. Now you're like, I gotta like not do that because it would look weird.
Dude, imagine taking notes. Imagine taking notes. Couldn't it be me? Couldn't it be me, dude? I'm the worst note taker in the world.
I know, it just like sticks in your brain, which is kind of surprising because you're like a big debater. So I'm surprised you're not more like, oh, I need to take notes so I can just bash this person and like tell them they're a fool.
Yeah, dude, I'm actually very good at debating, dude. Some people say I'm a master at it, but I did take debate classes.
Stop.
I did take debate classes in school, like way back when. And that was like crazy because you had to take notes. Because again, you had to be able to articulate why people were wrong, right? And so you had to be able to like take notes on everything, so you could really make sure that you phrased it accurately to how they phrased it. But dude, actually, that was the crazy thing. Okay, super random, but like I remember watching people who were like super into like formal debates, and they're note taking so well that they end up with these like bumps on their fingers where they build these like super thick calluses. Like super crazy thick calluses from their pens rubbing up against their finger all the time. It was actually kind of disgusting. It was kind of actually a little gross. So I could never do something that causes me to like grow a deformity just to handle it. I get calluses from playing guitar, but that's minor. That is so minor.
Yeah, those are pretty minor.
Yeah.
Well, anyways. Well, yeah, no, I had a really good vacation, just to touch on that really quick. Good weather, good overall. Again, I don't know how, but like every single time there's like a WoW launch, a WoW season, a new anything in WoW, it's like I'm like busy. Like I'm like either on vacation, I'm on like work travel, like I'm just like so caught up with other things that I just don't have like a single moment to play. And I'm like tired of it, man. I need to start taking vacations like you when things come out.
Yeah, dude, just take a week off work and sit and play all week. Yeah, but because I guess season 1 you had like a work trip, right?
Yeah. The launch of the War Within, I literally played for like a day, and then I had to go on a work trip for like a week and a half.
At least in this case, though, like you didn't have like, because I feel like for the launch of the expansion, you're sitting there at work like, why the heck am I doing this? Everybody else is having fun. I'm stuck away in a room. At least this time, maybe. At least this time you're able to be having fun. I believe you went to Disney, right, with the family?
Yeah, no, to be honest, I didn't even think of like World of Warcraft.
Okay,
not even like a little bit.
I was hyping it up. I hope it lived up to how I hyped it up. I really do. But what did you think of like the Star Wars part of the park?
Oh, it was really cool.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, the one ride was the Millennium Falcon ride was kind of neat.
Yeah.
It gave me a massive headache though.
Oh no. The line to it is also cool. Like it was just cool seeing all the stuff they built up.
Yeah, it's really neat. Yeah. That was really neat. But I didn't get to ride the other Star Wars ride just because the line was like 2 hours long, and I'm like, I'm not gonna wait, and I'm not gonna pay like $25 to skip the line.
That ride is crazy. That ride is actually like insane. When I went, you had to pre-register to ride that ride. So you actually had to like early in the morning when you first wake up, you actually had to like register to have access to that ride. So only people who like pre-registered could do it. And somehow, because we went in like mid-September, right when everybody went back to school, the parks were like pretty empty. And so I got onto, I think, twice, which is crazy.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. But enough Disney World. We can save all of that for the Disney Band podcast.
For the Disney podcast,
yeah. For our Disney podcast that we record, never.
Oh my gosh!
You're back now. Did you have a chance to listen to last week's episode where we brought on some of the guys from the guild in our community?
I did, and I actually took notes on how I wanted to respond to the
Ooh.
podcast that was recorded last week. So I can just go through them if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
Okay. They're pretty quick bulleted, and here they are.
Okay.
Swag, you're not an engineer. Ram doesn't fix graphic issues. J Rob, you're a nerd. X get wrecked. Brunick, it's a pleasure as always. And Harv, thanks for filling in for me.
What? I didn't
That
even
was
say.
my notes.
I didn't even say that. Ram will fix graphics issues. I think so.
No, that was X. That was X.
Oh, okay.
No, you didn't specifically be like, oh, Ram will fix graphic issues, but you're like, oh, like I was struggling with graphics, and then you're just like, well, but I have 64 gigs of RAM, and I was like, swag, you nerd. Anyways.
Oh, it was because we were talking about parts. We were talking about parts, and part of it's graphics, part of it's just processing with OBS open. So I wasn't so I wasn't sure if it was actually a CPU issue or GPU issue that was going on at the time. I was just trying to alleviate any pressure I could. But then I think somebody was like, "Oh, well, my PC has a lot of RAM." I was like, "No, I'm already I'm pretty stacked. I'm pretty stacked on RAM." That's the one thing I do have. You missed out on my computer work this week, though. I have a fan that was making a lot of noise in my computer, and I thought I fixed it, and then right as I went live, it started making a ton of noise again. And so during my 5-minute countdown into stream, I just opened up my PC and snipped the cable.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. That's kind of funny though.
Yeah, that's terrible. But I did it. I mean, it was like a $25 set of fans I bought 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's time to replace them.
Yeah,
But dude,
it definitely sounds like it.
Season 2's been fun. Have you had a chance to get in and play this week?
Yeah, I have, and to be honest, my real review of last week's podcast, very good. Like the conversation was very flowing. I mean, everyone kind of contributed their own little thing, and I really enjoyed listening to it. So again, shout out to those guys that filled in.
They did a great job.
I thought it was a really good podcast. But
it took a lot of people though to fill in your shoes, bro. It took a lot.
Everyone filled in a very specific role that I have, literally every single one. So perfect. Yeah, no, our show notes say first and second impressions of season 2, because this is obviously your second impression, and this is my first. So I've had some time to play around, and to be honest, I don't like to do this because I like to give it a couple weeks, Yeah. I don't really want to just blanket just be like, this season's going to be bad, because I don't know, it could turn, right?
Yeah.
But I'm a little nervous. I just don't think the problem was fixed, to be honest. I'm super nervous, and this is what I'll say 2 things, and then I want to just kind of just dive into those 2 things, and maybe even get your opinion on maybe your second impressions. The first thing I'm going to say is easy does not equal good.
Yeah.
And the second thing I'm going to say is I'm nervous that Blizzard is just doubling down and bringing back the old style of dungeons that they literally just got rid of. And what I mean by that is they're bringing back the 2 through 20 that they literally just got rid of.
Yeah. And I think we had talked about being afraid of that before the season came out.
Mad nervous that that's coming out. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you have some quick second impressions, if not, we can just dive into good does not equal, or easy does not equal good, but I'm pretty sure we're both maybe on the same page with that one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it also depends too. It depends a little bit on a couple things, because I do agree, right? Easy doesn't equal good. It does feel like, now, one thing you missed was when the season came out, there were a few dungeons that actually almost felt impossible. They actually felt so hard.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They felt so freaking hard. Like Cinderbrew Meadery. The first couple times into Cinderbrew, I think I had Fat Hall healing too, and he's he's a solid healer, solid healer. I think it took us 3 or 4 attempts to kill the first boss, and we were just dying to healing shortage. It was bonkers how much healing had to go out. and this was for like a +2, by the way, a +2. How much healing had to
Okay.
go out? How much we had to use defensives and self healing and like just situational awareness. And then like 2 days into the season or a day into the season, they hit it with like a 33% nerf to that specific AoE damage that was going out.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that boss, it's still not the easiest boss, but it feels way more manageable. Like it feels way more manageable right now than maybe it has in the past, right? And so, or maybe it had not in the past, but in that day, right?
In that day,
Day or two that we had. So I don't know, because I'm kind of mixed, right? There's elements where I'm like, yeah, did they just make everything really easy? Because they also hit all dungeons with a 10% nerf across the board, right? So it wasn't even just at 33%.
Like just now?
No, this was
Or
like day 2 of the season or day 3 of the season.
Okay.
Like it was too hard. It was too
Yeah.
hard. Part of it, I think there's still some pretty solid healer checks going on in the expansion, like in these dungeons. And I believe that there's some higher DPS checks than there have been previously as well, which might be good. My question I have, and there's something I was advocating for, and I'm happy with right now. I'm happy with the save it right now. Tanking does feel a lot better. Tanking feels specifically. And I don't know if that's just because dungeons themselves are way easier. I don't think so. But tanking does feel way better than it did last season.
In terms of just general overall, because I don't ever remember tanking being like, I don't want to say it was that bad in the first couple weeks, but like I don't think the problem was as big of a deal in the first couple weeks. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
because again, like I just wasn't around as much those first couple weeks.
So the first couple weeks of both seasons, threat management at the start of season 1 was horrendous.
Oh well, yeah.
The start of season 1 threat management was horrendous. Yeah. Trash hit hard, but whatever. And tank damage was abysmal. Like tank damage was embarrassingly bad. Like if your healer wasn't doing any damage at all, your tank was doing negative damage.
Yeah.
Right. This season, tanks feel like they can pump. Like prot warrior is like doing. And prot warrior will probably get a little bit of a nerf to their damage. They might be doing too 100%. Much. They might be doing too much damage. But even on my blood DK, like if I get a good big trash pack and I'm like hitting my cooldowns with some big AoE, I might be like third or second on the DPS charts. Maybe probably not first. You know, and even then, right? I'm only getting that high because my damage is good, but maybe the DPS I'm with aren't actually hitting the numbers that they should be able to hit, right? So it's kind of a balance of like, okay, my skill versus another person's skill. Now they should have a handicap because they are DPS spec, so they should naturally be above me. But maybe in this case, I'm getting above them just because of skill, right? Not saying that I'm very skillful, but maybe in that specific case. And plus, tank damage rotations aren't hard, right? Tank damage rotations are not a difficult thing to think about. So this season, what I'm encountering is better damage on tanks. I'm encountering less crazy tank busters going on. So like bosses, tank busters seem a lot more reasonable. And trash don't have the tank busters that they had last season. Last season, trash had weird tank busters, and it made it hard to like pull big. So you just kind of got wrecked. That seems to be pulled back a lot. My self healing is okay. I don't really think they did anything with that. But again, if I'm not getting absolutely just like wrecked by random trash tank busters and whited to death all the time, it feels a lot better. Like it feels way more manageable. And my threat generation is fine. My threat generation is probably the best it's been. And by the way, I'm not even super geared yet, right? Like I'm pretty under geared for this season. And my threat generation feels fantastic. So I can't really attest for much else. I haven't done any healing. I definitely haven't done any DPS in dungeons. So I can't attest for the difficulty of them. If anybody here listening is a DPSer for like mid to high range keys, feel free to chime in. Let me know in the chat. However, what I'm experiencing is that like maybe it is easier, but it also feels like it's more enjoyable. Does it make sense? The things that feel easier now are things that I don't think necessarily should have felt hard to begin with. They felt unfair. They felt unfair kind of hard. Let me clarify.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to an extent. I mean, you did just say that you are under geared, and I think I mean, I'm definitely undergeared, and I'm definitely doing higher content that I've ever done in the first week. I mean, 7s and 8s, I've never done those in like a first week.
Yeah.
And I'm like extremely undergeared. I'm like 430, right?
Yeah.
Or 530 or 630. I don't even know. I don't even know what it is. I'm something 30, right?
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, you're right. The things that felt bad last time feel a lot easier now, but I'm nervous that that easiness is going to attribute to, okay, I'm done with everything, and now I just you know, it's easy and I've steamrolled everything. Now what do I do, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's always kind of that problem that a lot of people face, where it's like the balance of, hey, do I play this game? Well, maybe not for WoW, but for like other games, hey, do I play this game for 80 hours, 2 weeks in a row and beat it and never touch it again? Or, hey, do I take my time, play a couple hours a week, play it for a couple months and then finally beat it, right?
Yeah.
WoW's a little different because, you can always switch things up. You can do different things within WoW. It's not like it's, a straightforward game, There's a lot of different avenues you can take with WoW, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thing that makes me nervous again about the easy portion is, are we going to be able to steamroll things really quickly? And then are we just going to be bored with it? And the conversation of, them bringing back, making dungeons easier at a lower key level and making the higher dungeons more easily ran by, players like you and I that aren't like your top hardcore WoW players. But, we run 10s,
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to do 12s this season? I would probably guess, yeah, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty achievable for us this season. And, that also kind of doubles down on, hey, we just got rid of that. We just got rid of that. And now you're seeing that, hey, Mythic 2s and 3s, the only difference is they got a timer, right? There's no affixes, no death penalties, like there's nothing.
Yeah. And I guess, right, that kind of becomes part of the question, right? Now, I do think that they're, we read one of those interviews a little while back where they're talking about the transition from Delves into Mythic Plus being rough. And I actually do agree. I think that the transition, they tried to fix it, very clearly tried to fix that transition. I don't know if you're aware, but plus 2s, I think they give Hero and Vault.
Yeah, that's nuts.
They give Hero Track Gear and Vault, right? Which is insane.
Yes.
And my frustration with all of that is that what they did was they said, hey, Delves are giving gear that is too good, and it means players are going into M+. One, they don't have the skills to succeed in M+, and two, they're being pushed into too high of an M+ level because they're coming off Delves going, well, I only want Hero Track Gear and Myth Track Gear. I already have most of my Hero Track Gear from Delves. I just want to get some more. And I need Gilded Crest. So I'm going into 7s and 8s, right?
Yep.
That's what they're doing, right? And then they hated it because they knew no mechanics. They weren't getting invited to groups. When they were getting invited to groups, they were just getting wrecked, right? Despite their gear, they were just getting absolutely destroyed in these Delves or in these M+ dungeons. So Blizzard needed to find a way to help transition them from Delves to dungeons. And their answer to that was to remove some of the more punishing affixes that, and by the way, though, I actually have no problem with the death timer being removed from the death timer, like punishment being removed from like 2s and 3s, even though it makes them easier. And it does make a smoother transition from no timer to timer, right? Because then if you do have that player in your group who kind of maybe does suck a little bit and is dying a lot, right? Because there's sometimes you get in the 2 where you just have that one dude who's just dying on repeat. It's almost like death. It's almost like they're a hunter, and instead of fake death, they just have like real death. Right?
Oh my gosh, what the heck?
Right. They just have like they just die. Like they have a death button. Like the only button on their keyboard is like a little skull, and every time they click it, they fall over dead. Right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. Everybody's been in a group. Everybody's been in a group where somebody's like that. Everybody's been in a group with somebody like that. Right. So I would say though for 2s and 3s that at least alleviates maybe some of the toxicity that they might face. Right now. Them dying still hurts the group. At the end of the day, by the way, they're in timed content. They're expected to perform at a level to which everybody can time that content, right? And so if you are dying on repeat, you are trolling. You're trolling that group. And you could be like, well, I got to learn somewhere. It's like, yeah, take a second, do it in M0, learn the mechanics M0, then go into a +2, right? Maybe if you have to, watch a quick video, read a quick guide. I'm talking like 4 minutes, man. 4 minutes, 5 minutes maybe, right? Maybe 5 minutes max, right? This is like just +2 difficulty. However, even though I can say that on the podcast, that's not how it's going to work out. People are still going to go in totally uninformed in every capacity for that dungeon, and just they're literally just going to crawl across the floor. They're not even they'll never be standing up. They will literally be floor POV the whole time, and you'll be fine because it's a +2, so that timer's pretty forgiving. You'll probably be fine.
Yeah,
however, with the death timer, I think somebody dying on repeat, constantly chopping time off the timer over and over and over, I do think that can lead to some more toxicity, because that adds pressure. Right? Every time you see somebody die, you're like, oh, that's time off the timer. That's time off the timer. That's time off the timer. It's not the 15 seconds. It's just 5. But even still, I get it. So to me, that move I was okay with. That move I was like, yeah, that's fine. It makes a smoother transition from M0 to +2. Okay, whatever. What I don't like, though, and I don't mind too if they need to be a little bit easier. I do think if they're a little bit easier, I think Blizzard needs to go and change how score works, right? I do think that, like, again, if 7s are easier than they were before, then doing all 7s shouldn't get you KSM, right? Maybe it's got to be all 8s now, all 9s,
dude,
right?
100%.
Right. You do need to compensate for that. I think that's why they added Keystone Legend, by the way. I think they wanted more reward options and plus. And you know what? That's okay.
Sure.
Whatever. If Keystone Legend is the new Keystone Master, if Keystone Legend's meant to be the new Keystone Master and not necessarily like an elevated reward, okay, whatevs, right? I think we all can agree Keystone Master's kind of been getting easier and easier every season anyways. So
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
would I prefer for them to rescale
part,
everything? Sure. But think about the problem then is you have a bunch of players who got Keystone Master the last couple seasons who then would not be able to get Keystone Master if they scaled it up. So that might feel a little crappy. So I guess adding Keystone Legends, plus we get 2 mounts. Okay, whatever. What I do have a problem with, though, and again, if it was just like one of these things, I'd be like, okay. But this thing just makes it all worse. I think all just tremendously worse. The answer to fixing the Delve to M+ transition is to make Delve gear lower. And instead, they raised M+ gear, right?
Yeah.
So instead of saying, okay, and I don't mean M+ gear across the board, which I still don't think would be the right idea, right? They just said, hey, low-end M+ is now giving heroic gear. And so that way, if you're coming out of Delves, if you're like maxing out gear in Delves, you'll still go, oh, well, I can get more heroic gear. I still have a couple spots I can replace with heroic gear. Doing low Delves is worth it to learn. In theory, that kind of works because you're like, yeah, that makes sense. That's a smooth transition. But in practice, I think it makes M+ way less interesting.
Yeah, it does.
Especially in the mid-range, right? So I'm talking that like 4 to 7s range. Why does that even exist?
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't need to.
Who queues for that?
Yeah, I don't think anyone does, right?
Right? Because at that point, just run 2s, maybe 3s. Just run 2s and 3s all day long. Get your hero gear, right? And then when you need Gilded Crest, just bump up to 8. So now you have the same problem where people are going from easy content to significantly harder content. This time, though, it's instead of the jump from Delve to a +7, it's a jump from a +2 to a +8, right? And people aren't going to get invited. They're going to be frustrated. They're going to want the loot. At least in this case, they have some M+ experience, so maybe they'll feel incentivized to work their way up, maybe, into that. But the answer was to give Champion Gear Max as a reward from Delves. Champion Gear Max. And I know people hate that I say that. I get why. I get why maybe it's not your favorite response from me. But then that means that your transition point goes from Delve into +2 and +2 offering champion gear, right? Not heroic, not hero gear in the vault. Suddenly makes a much smoother transition. And not everybody deserves, I'm sorry, but not everybody deserves to get all difficult, like all levels of gear from all types of content. I don't mythic raid. I don't. Maybe one day I will. It's a lot more work. I'll beg my future wife when that time comes for permission to commit 6 nights a week to mythic raiding, right? And so that means that the only myth track gear I get is from the weekly vault, which sometimes gives me some and sometimes doesn't, from doing plus 10 delves and higher. Or not delves, plus 10 and plus and higher, which, by the way, is very difficult. I don't care how hard you say a plus 11 is. I just ran a plus 8 delve. Not even on it was on the healer, which I guess this season healers are kind of juiced, but this is after the brand nerf, by the way. After the brand nerf, I have like no good curios on brand. My brand's not even max level for last season. He's not even last season's max level, right? Running a plus 8 on a 610 eye level shaman. Right. Now, I did die a few times, but I died because I wasn't being very serious, right? But we completed it. We timed it. Or not timed it, but we completed within the death count. I got my bountiful loot at the end. It was great. I got a nice little ring. But I say that to say, like, I can't be convinced that a plus 11 is on par then with a plus 10, right? So, like, the idea of giving myth track from any difficulty of delve, especially with tank brand existing now, just doesn't make sense to me. Again, post nerf tank brand. So all that to say, like, I recognize I'm not going to always max out on myth track gear because I'm not doing mythic raiding, because it's not something that I have the time or the ability to commit to right now, right? I think it's fair to say, hey, like, dude, like, if delves are what you love to do, then they should give out champion gear, by the way, is more than enough to run all levels of delve.
Heck yeah.
Right? Maybe I'd be okay if you had like one kill on the like question mark boss that could put a myth track in your vault. Maybe.
Nah,
I don't even know.
That doesn't even seem right. Nah, that doesn't seem right.
Maybe heroic. I don't know. But all that to say, like, yeah, my point, ranting, rambling, whatever. My point just being that I think Blizzard needs to acknowledge the elephant in the room, and that delves are a significantly easier gearing experience than raiding or M pluses, and the gear they drop should be equivalent to that. I just want gear to be equal to difficulty, right? I want plus 10s. If plus 10s are what offer myth track in the vault, plus 10s then should be on the same difficulty level as early mythic raid bosses.
Correct. Yeah.
That to me, that's where it should be. And if that's not the case, then you got to raise it up to whatever level does feel equivalent to that. But anyways, I just rambled a ton about a topic that we've talked about too much. But again, I think it's causing more problems, systemic problems in the current M plus scene that we're going to see, I think, get real bad this season as players don't want to do anything in the mid key range.
I would argue that we haven't talked about it.
That's true.
We haven't talked about this season.
That's true. We didn't talk about this season, but that's my rambling.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's a big disconnect between delves and Mythic Plus right now, and everyone knows it. Like, that's the sad part. Like, literally everyone in Blizzard is like, oh yeah, we realize there's a problem, and they're just like, yeah, we know there's a problem, and we're just like, you guys gonna fix it? You guys not gonna fix it? Like, maybe, I don't know. I'm at the point where I'm like, we need to fix it or we don't. Like, and it basically comes down to, hey, if it never gets fixed, is this just like the new meta? Like, is this just what people are gonna do? And are we just gonna revert back to old dungeon, philosophy, and basically Keystone Legend is just gonna become like, eventually all plus 15s, which is basically just going to be what KSM used to be. And then no one's going to run basically 2s to 6s or 2s to 7s. And, it's like, and if that's what we do, like, whatever, like you kind of said earlier, you're like, like, it's whatever. I mean, there's not really much else we can do, right? Like, literally, what else are we going to do at this point, right? Stop playing the game, I guess. But, this is the game we love, right?
I love playing the game. Yeah.
You know, we pay good money to play this game, right? It's not like we're just like, okay, like I'll go play something else, and like it's an experience. Like it's not like there is anything like, wow. I mean,
Dude,
there's other
nothing.
MMOs, right?
Yeah, dude. We were watching one. Okay, so we were watching one MMO trailer on stream today, and it's called Aaron Shore, I think. Aaron Shore, I believe was the name. Anyways, so it's an MMO RPG like simulator, I guess is the best way to explain it. So it's single player.
Interesting.
It's single player, but it's designed in a way that makes you feel like you're playing an MMO by having a ton of like NPC players that apparently are supposed to like interact with you in like real kind of ways. I don't know if that's true or not. Anyways, it looked cool. I mean, it was very RuneScape-esque in the graphics. Like the graphics felt kind of It's like think like the graphics of old school RuneScape, but with like the POV of like WoW, right? It's like the normal traditional MMO kind of camera work, but the graphicsy of old school RuneScape. Now, which is fine, dude. You know, whatever. There's always new games coming out all the time. There's one game that's like basically just M+. It's basically just you just do M+ all day long. But
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe. It seems cool.
Maybe it is. Maybe it's not.
So this MMO though that I was looking at, right? We're watching the video live on Twitch. And it's just like has a bunch of reviews, like a bunch of people's comment reviews popping up on the screen. And one of them, I was like reading them all with like an announcer voice. And I get to one of them, I couldn't finish it. It was like, this makes me feel like I have friends to play an MMO RPG with. And I was like, no. Which, by the way, you know, if that's you, if you're listening, you're like, dude, I play WoW, but I ain't got friends to play WoW with. Shameless plug, dude. Chicken and I got the best guild on the entire planet called Astra. You know, let us know on Discord. There's a link in the description. Let us know on Discord that you want to join our guild, and we can get you plugged in. Obviously, only accessible for North American servers, so any NA players.
Exactly, dude. Just do it. I mean, I'm so involved in the guild. I do things with guildies all the time. Like I'm always doing like M+ content or raid or just everything with guildies every single night.
It's more fun that way. It is way more fun that way to have stuff with friends.
And that was a lie.
I knew it, but I was like, hey, whatever. He's hyping.
You're like, yeah, sure. Like I'm not gonna throw this guy under the bus and make him look like a doo-doo head that literally plays WoW like it's a single player game.
Like a single player game. But you know what though? Like I do, just to what you're saying. It's one of those things where we rant about a lot, but M+ is something we care about, and we want it to feel good, not just for us. Like, here's the thing. You and I will just enjoy M+ no matter what. Like, no matter what the reward is, we're going to have fun because we like M+. What I worry about, though, is players experiencing for the first time. That's why the, like, death timer being removed for early keys doesn't bother me. Because I'm like, yeah, you know what? That transition from an M0 to a +2 should feel a little bit smoother, a little bit less complicated, right? And then introduce the death timer, and then start to give them some of these other elements. That's okay with me. I would also argue heroic and M0 should probably be more difficult than they are. You know, that might be a whole nother question for another day. I actually wouldn't mind. Okay, hot take. I wouldn't mind if trash was harder to kill in an M0 than in a +2. Right? And then that's kind of
a hot take.
And then what made the +2 harder wasn't more difficult trash or bosses or anything. It was actually just the timer, right? And so like that way, players going from M0 to +2 actually go, oh wait, I can really clear this. Like I can pull bigger. I can, you know, like they can start to feel what should an M+ feel like, rather than being like it's harder and there's a timer, right? Like I don't know. And then obviously from there it continues to scale up way past that, but. I wouldn't mind if like the difficulty of trash and stuff on a M0 was actually closer to like a +4 level, and then +2 and 3 were kind of getting more used to the timer, and then from there scaling up. But I don't even know if that would actually work. But again, though, that would be bringing M0 up, not bringing a +2 down, right? And on top of that, I also think you have to bring heroic up. I think heroic dungeons are pointless.
Yeah. See, you know, I mean, to your point, I think you're right. I think instead of changing like M2s and M3s, like I feel like they should have just changed M0s, because I'm still not running M0s. Like I'm still just grabbing my +2 and going straight into a key. Like it's and like, I mean, you made a good point. I honestly think that they should add a timer to M0, but it should count up. Like it shouldn't count down. It should just count up. And if you time it within like a certain time, like 40 minutes, like make it like a little bit higher than what you would need to time the key in M+. You get like 3 extra crests, right? And if you don't, you get the same amount of crests, right? Like they need to make M0s like worth running. They're just not worth running right now.
No.
And 2s and 3s are going to become the same thing, and then 4s and 5s are going to become the same thing, and then it's they're doubling down. I'm calling it right here. You heard it on the podcast at 6:47 on March 14th. Chicken called that Blizzard is doubling down.
If we're gonna be a little honest with each other too, though, just a little honest, not too honest, but a little honest. I think part of it is also like personal skill as well, right? Because you and I are going into a new season. Sure. We're going to a new season, and we're just like, okay, how quick can I get into doing +6s, right? How fast can I get to doing +6? However, I'm thinking through like, okay, we had Capo on the podcast a little while back. We had X on just last week, right? Those guys are doing like 10s, like day 2.
They're like, how quick can I do a 10
right?
the first week?
And that right. So there's us, right? And then there's them. And you and I think, are more in the middle, right? So like, if those numbers that I saw before are accurate, and a +5 actually was the average key that players are doing, then it would make sense that they need a good on ramp, right? I think M0s are actually a lot more valuable than people realize, and I also don't think Blizzard does a good job showing people how to do M+, or even that M+ exists. Like, what in the game actually, other than your guild members going like, hey, dude, why have you not done an M+ yet, right? Other than your guild members do that, like, what tells you about that, right? And it doesn't tell you about, like, M0, right? Like, M0 doesn't. I almost feel like M0 should be an auto queue, just like Heroic is, rather than a non-auto queue. And that way, then, at the end of the M0, you get your key, and you're like, oh, how do I use this? Right? Damn. And then you find out about the like group finder, like the actual like search and stuff that we use, right? That to me makes more sense, right? Because right now you kind of just stumble across it somehow. You probably have to watch a video or a streamer or a guild member has to tell you. And yeah, some of chat's agreeing M0 or not M0. Heroics feel pointless. Some chat though is saying like time walking in Heroics and M0s are like their optimal content. And so I think it just depends on the player. Every player is like different. And I do think though that Heroics are pointless. I think Heroics are the biggest complaint I get with leveling dungeons and Heroic dungeons is that people speed through them too fast. And you and I are like, I don't want to be in there for a long time. But we don't want to be in there for a long time because the content is just boring, right? Like if I was pulling one pack at a time, dude, I could probably play old school RuneScape at the same time, right? Like, I could probably do that and pull the dungeon. And that's why if you throw me in a Heroic dungeon, no matter what my eye level is, dude, it could be a fresh level 80. I'm pulling that whole dungeon in one pull. I don't care, dude. And I don't care if it means I don't care if it means I wipe. That is the only way that content becomes fun, is if it's like if I'm juicing, right? Because I need to be maximizing. Look, you can see a little Lego in my hand. I need to be maximizing my rotation, and like I need that adrenaline, right? And I can't get that adrenaline in a Heroic doing small pulls. At the same time, not everybody wants that, but I do think Heroics should be a little bit more complicated. M+ should be a little bit more complicated, and that should walk you into M+. I just don't think the progression's smooth. Heroic just feels like, and even like we have a comment right now in chat, right, saying that they're working on trying to get geared for +2s, and almost always when I hear somebody tell me they're trying to get geared for +2s, and sweet dude, it's your comment. So let me know as you're listening, what is your eye level? What is your eye level right now? Because every time I hear that, their eye level is actually already well above and beyond what I would expect of my eye level to be to go into plus 2s. Now I know I'll go into plus 2s, maybe a little bit on the low side, right? But you're saying 629, right? You can definitely walk in. You could definitely walk into a plus 2 at 620. You could definitely walk into a plus 2 at 620 for sure. No problem.
Oh yeah.
No problem.
I'm pretty sure.
Especially after
I just
the nerfs.
ran like a 7 at like a 630.
Yeah, yeah. Especially with the huge nerfs that we had, and we had more nerfs like yesterday to dungeons. So yeah, I wouldn't. Right. Sometimes it's just getting in there and doing it. Right. But again, the game doesn't really encourage you. The game kind of just makes it seem scary, and you kind of have to ask around and figure out and like. That's why I was encouraged. I mean, I hate to say it, I was encouraged guilds and stuff and community, even using Mine and Chicken's community, the Warband community, to do content together. I definitely encourage you guys to do that because it does help. It does help to be able to go into a dungeon with a friend and feel like, okay, they can just ping stuff for me or let me know what's going on. But yeah, anyways, I kept interrupting you. You were trying to say something. Sorry about that.
I was gonna say, do you think that they should? Well, see, I'm like, maybe they should well, see, my technical side is like, oh, they really need to like maybe try to implement some kind of algorithm with dungeon queuing where it kind of tries to lump like similar eye levels together and maybe similar like play styles, but that's a lot of work, a lot of AI that would need to be involved in that, and maybe it's just too much work. Would you
be more interested in keys that worked more like skill-based matchmaking in other games, where like
a heroic, like a queued key,
like something, like a queued key that is based upon your rating, right? Your rating through doing content, right? And if you're doing successful, that rating goes up. If you're doing unsuccessful, it goes down. But then it just randomly puts you in dungeons. Would that be more or less fun than what we have now? That would be easier, by the way. That would be way easier, by the way, for players to kind of understand the system.
Sure. For like heroic and like time walking.
No, I'm talking about M+.
Even M0s.
No, M+.
Not M+. Nope. only queued content right now. Like I'm talking I keep saying M0s. At that point, I feel like M0s would have to be, queued content or self-queued content, if you will.
Yeah.
Just because
like an auto queue type thing. Yeah.
Auto queue. Yeah, that's the word I'm trying to look for. But yeah, I feel like there's always going to want to be a pick to that, because then, theoretically speaking, how is this algorithm going to work? Is it always going to choose? Is it always going to pair like, hey, a battle res together? Hey, a lust. Hey, maybe this dungeon has like a goated strat that could use like a shroud or something like that, right? It's going to be different things like that, and it's always going to come down to, hey, I'm always going to want to pick who I want to pick because there's certain reason I pick people like that,
Yeah.
Like I'm always going to pick a lust. I'm always going to have I have a B-res, so I'm not always going to pick someone with a B-res, but typically like a second B-res is nice, especially if I die, because then I can't B-res myself.
Yep. Oh, I'm the same way.
Right.
By the way, I agree. I think, and that's the problem, right? Like I pitched that idea because I was like, this would be the alternative, right? The problem that you run into is, as you said, right? There's something innately really fun about pre-planning your group, right? Now, other people will complain and call that meta picking, right? But there is something fun about being able to pre-plan your group. There's something really nice about the amount of personal responsibility we have when forming our groups and autonomy that we have, right? That you can go, oh, hey, this is my friend who's never done a key this season, but I know they'll be fine, so we're going to toss them into our +5 with us. Why not, right? Or like, I hate to say it, right, but you can get carried, right? Like I could go and get carried in a group at like a +12 or something. I don't, but I can confidently say I've never paid for a dungeon carry. One time I paid for a raid carry for AOTC because I didn't think we were going to get it with our guild, and I was like pretty new back to WoW, like returning, and I was getting like severe FOMO, and so I like paid the gold to get an AOTC kill. And then I think like a month later, we actually killed the boss anyway, so it was pointless.
Oh dang!
It was kind of pointless.
Happens,
It was
dude.
pointless, but anyways. What was I? But reason being, the autonomy to be able to form your group how you want to go and how you want to. There's something I think inherently fun about that just like an auto queue doesn't offer. But the nature of that means that then, like, how does Blizzard make that content known to players and known of when they can go in?
Yeah,
So many players look at the eye level requirement for heroic and just go, well, when I hit that requirement, I'll go in, right? And you know how often, like all the time, I get players in our Discord, players in guild, especially in guild chat and game, that are just like, hey, what eye level should I be to do it? A +2. What eye level should I be to do this? Or what eye level should I be to do Mythic Dungeons? And the reality is the moment that you think heroic dungeons are too easy or easy enough, go into M0.
Yep.
And once you think M0 is doable, you're like, oh yeah, I have no problem doing M0. Go into +2. And once you do some +2s and they feel doable, go to +3, then +4. Right? Like, what's the worst that happens? You fail a dungeon and your key goes down? Whatevs.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody gets mad at you? Whatevs.
You know, you said something that kind of triggered like a thought that I've been having.
Yeah.
And it was in regards to being carried in dungeons. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I said to myself, I think M+, I think we've said this before, and maybe it wasn't even on the podcast. I think, when M+ is in a good state, I think it's going to be when DPS is the hardest role.
Yes.
And I'm not saying like, oh, it's got to be so hard.
And not even the hardest,
blah,
but just equivalent, at least equivalent
yes.
to everybody else, right?
No, and like honestly, like when I'm saying hardest, I mean like, hey,
that's where the key will fail, right?
Yeah, right. Like if a key's gonna fail, it's gonna be because you're DPS, right?
Right.
And it basically comes down to what you're saying is like, I 100% like I was running 2s 4s to get my key up to the 7 I have now.
Yeah.
And I think I was running like a 4 floodgate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
fun fact, I have not done a single floodgate.
Okay, well, I'll talk about that after this.
I've heard it's good. I've heard it's a good dungeon. I just, for whatever reason, with the amount of time I've had to play this week or the last 2 weeks, somehow have just not. And I usually run my own keys. That's why I run my own keys most of the time. I've just not gotten a floodgate key at all. Just haven't gotten one.
Interesting.
I've got like 4 times 7s or something and no floodgate.
Oh my goodness. I'll give my opinion on floodgate after this.
Okay.
I think so. I was running this key and I got a queue where it was a bunch of people coming in. It was a 4, I think, and I was like, okay, like a lot of people were queuing with no rating or like 200, 300 rating, right? And I got a queue in with someone it was a group of 2 people. It was someone that has 0 rating and like a little bit lower of an eye level, like probably not anything crazy. I think it was like 615.
Yeah.
Not like anything too bad. And then they were paired with someone that was 2400 IO. And instantly I could have not clicked that button faster.
Yeah.
Because I knew that this guy will pull both of their weight. Yeah. And I think that is part of the problem. Like when you can easily pull a weight of a DPS, then that is maybe saying that DPSing is a little bit too easy. And don't get me wrong, there's always going to be those people that sell 10s and stuff that are just like extremely goated at the game, right? And they can easily compensate. But for the average person, I mean, they got to be doing just enough DPS to make it through the key, right? And it's clear right now that like that's not the case. And granted, I was a little overgeared for maybe a 2 and a 4 at the point. I was pumping damage too. Like I was pretty much in par with this other person.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I see you like out of the corner of my eye making a.
Ignore it. Just ignore it.
Anyways, yeah, but I think it comes down to if I think that's kind of how Blizzard fixes this. I mean, I think that one of the ways of fixing it, right? I think DPS need to be the breaking point of a key, and it kind of seems like we're getting there, right? Honestly, it's kind of weird because I feel like we've turned tides back to now healers are the problem. but we'll see, right?
Yeah, this season, I will admit, this season does feel better in that regard, though. In that regard, this season does feel better. And what we mean, if you're listening right now, what we mean is that in season 1 of The War Within, it really felt like if you weren't going to time a key, it was because of deaths, right? Yeah. Not timing a key was almost always because you just died too much, which, by the way, is totally fair. Like, totally fair. Don't be dying. We're arguing, though, that the best experience for M+ is actually not missing a key timer because of deaths, but missing the key timer because of speed, right? We think that your speed through the dungeon should be the determining factor of whether you time that dungeon or not time the dungeon. The reason being, and the core reason we say that, is because if it's based upon deaths, all of the pressure, I don't care if it's a little Timmy standing on fire the whole time dying 12 times over, all of the pressure falls onto your tank and your healer, right? Because if it's individual players dying, the healer will feel responsible. And if your tank dies and the whole group wipes, then your tank's responsible, right? And the problem we were running into was the timer, the timer punishment is high, and I think it still is in higher keys, still the 15-second punishment. But that timed with a lot of trash packs having major tank busters going on in them.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. A lot. That caused problems. That caused problems where like your tank would wipe and then boom, that was done. Your key was shot at that point. And it wasn't like one time, right? Like I'm talking like 20 deaths, 25 deaths, right? Like we're talking about that like 6 to 10 range for keys. Maybe now it's like 7 to 12 range or something. But the point being though is that we believe dungeons are at their best when it's really a balance between all of them, right? You want your tank living, you want your DPS blasting, and you want your healer healing. And for a while, it was kind of like, hey, so long as you live, your DPS could literally just be like on follow mode, and you'll time that dungeon. Right? It could be like your DPS could go be eating ice cream in another room and just like on auto follow, and you would time that key. And now it seems like it's swinging back a little bit, which is good, right? You want balance where everybody feels like they're pulling their weight in order to complete and time that key. And the big reason for that, though, is because it helps alleviate the healer tank shortage, right? You want to have a balance of healers, tanks, and DPS across the board queuing for dungeons. And you need tanking and healing to not feel responsible for the whole weight of the dungeon. Tanks are feeling responsible for the routing, are feeling responsible for the pool sizes. Your healers are constantly healing these insane healing checks that they're putting in dungeons all over the place. You know, like DPS gotta be pulling their weight too. Not just in terms of like doing, again, because if DPS ignore mechanics, that feels like a tank healer problem, not a DPS problem. You know, the only way it feels like a DPS problem is if you're literally going too slow because your DPS aren't DPSing enough. That's when it feels like a DPS problem.
Yep. Anyways, let's so I do want to touch on the floodgate thing. I do think it's a really cool dungeon. I think they took a lot of aspects from other dungeons that, you know, I just don't think they're really, you know, they took some aspects from older dungeons that we just haven't seen in the War Within dungeons, and I do think it's a really good dungeon.
I've heard great things. People seem to really like it, especially after post-nerf. Post-nerf, people seem to really like it.
Really good.
Okay, hot take. I don't think there's a bad dungeon this season.
No, I don't really think there is either. I haven't played all of them just yet.
I don't think some people like the last boss of Shadow Flame. Is that what it is? Shadow Flame Cleft? Dark Flame Cleft.
Dark Flame Cleft. Oh, right? Dude, that the last boss of that dungeon has always been bad.
Yeah. I don't think it's as bad as it was, but it's not great. But even still, though, the rest of the dungeon's fine. Like, the rest of the dungeon is actually quite enjoyable. You know, Cinder Brew, I think, was really rough at the start. Cinder Brew had me very nervous. But with all the changes to Cinder Brew, I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem with it. Cinder Brew is a lot better now than it was at the start of the season.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
Right, literally within 2 days, maybe 3 days, within 3 days max, Blizzard had turned around my opinion of the dungeons this season tremendously. And that's the thing too, is I think sometimes when a season feels hard is because there's a couple dungeons that when you get that dungeon, it just feels like, well, my key's done, right? Like, guess I'm doing someone else's. And it doesn't feel that way right now. Like right now, everything, like the dungeon I thought I was gonna like the least this season, Theater of Pain, dude, somehow like Theater of Pain feels great right now. Like when I get a Theater of Pain, I had a Theater of Pain 7 this morning on stream, and I was doing it, and I was like, yo, I got a Theater of Pain, let's go, right? Like I was kind of hyped.
Best thing ever.
I was hyped up, yeah. So it is fascinating that am I equating easy with balanced, right? Am I going, oh, this season's too easy because every dungeon feels really balanced right now? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean that. I actually don't know. But it does feel good. It does feel good.
I don't either. I mean, as the season goes on, we'll definitely have more opinions about it.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of move on from this. We've talked about for a fair amount of time, literally 2/3 of the podcast. But just general, second impressions, drive mechanic, like you're still kind of, figuring out what you think about it. I've done it a little more, I do think it's one of those mechanics that I will enjoy actually, and I really hope they bring it to other content outside of that zone.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah. I think my impression of Drive is that Drive is fun. I love it.
Yeah.
I think some people don't like how wonky it feels. I think that's the right word I use, wonky.
Yeah.
However, I think that's totally intentional. I think that wonkiness makes it feel goblin-y, right? It makes it feel like goblin tech.
Yeah.
And I love it, right? Like I love hitting something and bouncing off of it and like trying to control myself, but I'm going way too fast to actually be healthily navigating this complex city, right? Nothing screams goblin than going full throttle in this place where you're not supposed to be going full throttle. And part of it for me is like, I think the city itself is built in a way that brings that to life. And if I took Drive and I just sat it in Kalimdor, would it feel the same, or would it just feel like I'm just driving without any obstacle, right? Like I almost feel like the obstacles are what make it. I don't know though. It is unique because it's not a mount. It's a spell. So I don't know what that. I don't know what that means for the future. I don't know if we'll ever see it anywhere else. If it's just like a one-off here. It does seem like a lot of work to not live longer than this, right? I wouldn't mind though if they like had some like Mario Kart style like tracks. Like I wouldn't mind if maybe they never made it available for the overworld as a normal mount, but they added in like a side game mode that was like Mario Kart-esque, and maybe you could just queue up with your friends when you're bored, right? Like queue up with your guildmates when you're bored and do like races Mario Kart style. That would be sick. Like that would actually like I don't feel like that'd be too hard for Blizzard to pull off. I really don't. And I think it'd be fun, and it wouldn't have to be like Plunderstorm, right? Because Plunderstorm requires so many people to queue that you really can only have it seasonally. Like I can see like a Thrall cart, we'll call Thrall cart, just being a evergreen content thing, because you're like waiting for raid, so you grab like 4 of your guildies and you go race, right? Like that could be fun. Anyways, that was just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, I guess time will tell, right?
Yeah.
And you've definitely finished the campaign at this point. Your thoughts on the lore of that is still, everything's tying together. You're enjoying the storyline.
Yeah, it's good. I saw someone make a comment on X the other day that I thought was very fascinating. And so Cataclysm came out a while ago. I think like 15 years ago or something, right? Like 15 years ago Cataclysm came out. And just now we finally got a conclusion to the starting zone that came with the goblins during Cataclysm, right? Gallywix being the original leader of the Horde goblins, right? Now finally being defeated. And we also got a conclusion to the Worgen. If you remember in Shadowlands, we got that quest line. In Shadowlands, we got a quest line. Okay, Shadowlands, we got a quest line to save Lordaeron, right? And I guess in Dragonflight, we got the quest line to save... I think it was Dragonflight, we got the quest line to save Gilneas, right? And so we finally we reclaimed the city of Gilneas. So both the racial starting zones from Cataclysm, 15 years later, have their stories concluded, which is kind of wild. Which is kind of wild, like to think about the scale of this game sometimes. But the story's been fun. I like going around. and like seeing all the goblin stuff, seeing people like Noggin Fogger popping up in the story. That's fun. The only thing is, and it's kind of from the raid. I don't know if you've done much raiding, if you pugged it at all or anything.
I've literally not touched it.
Okay. The last boss is kind of, in my opinion, design-wise lackluster. It just feels lackluster. And, it just feels like it's Gallywix. It feels like it should have been more extravagant, right? More showy, more crazy. Yeah. Instead, it was just kind of like him in mech suits. It actually felt more like a gnome fight than a goblin fight, if that makes sense. Felt way more like a gnome fight than a goblin fight. So
interesting.
That I was a little disappointed in. But you know what though? Like overall, the story's cool. Seeing Undermine for the first time after being like hinted at like 20 years ago is cool, right? It's cool to go down there. The city is awesome. Like you just feel it. Everything in there, you feel like you're in the goblin world. You're just like, whoa, this is a whole different world in WoW. Like it was cool. So lore-wise, I'm enjoying it. I don't think there's been anything like crazy groundbreaking in the story. I will say they are moving along the Xal'atath storyline. One thing I like, the last couple expansions have played off the idea of these all-knowing bad guys who are too smart, right? Like we're all playing checkers and they're playing 4D chess or something, right? So you look at the jailer, right? And the whole time the idea was that the jailer barely paid us any attention because he was too smart for us. And his plan was too convoluted for us to ever understand. He was always 12 steps ahead of us, right? And then after the jailer, we got Iridocron and Dragonflight. And same thing, master planner. He's coming up with everything. We think we're catching him, but he's actually just using us, right? And then we get Xal'atath. And it feels the same way at the start of the War Within with Xal'atath. Remember, like, we're in Dalaran and we're like, we gotta go fight. And then we, like, go to teleport. And right as we go to teleport, we realize this whole thing was orchestrated by Xal'atath. And she was actually just leading us into our demise. And then for the first, like, main quest line of this expansion, Xal'atath is always, like, one step ahead of us until Ilaria, hits her like, the Dark Heart item. And then she goes to, the idea of the lore here, she goes to Gallywix. Gallywix is going to repair it. The reason why Gallywix is going to repair it is because originally the goblins had helped make the demon soul for Deathwing, Neltharion or Neltharion. Anyways, made it for Deathwing, right? And the Dark Heart is a prototype of the demon soul. So it made the most sense for the goblins to be able to repair and fix the Dark Heart. It's not just this random relic that they're like, oh, maybe goblins could work on it. Like, there's actually like 20 years, 25 years or something of lore behind this specific item, if that makes any sense. So, anyways, Gallywix is repairing it. These ethereals show up. We think the ethereals are helping Xal'atath out. They're not really our allies. They're not helping us. We're fighting them. And then the ethereals take the Dark Heart and run off with it. And we're like, oh, Xal'atath has it. No, Xal'atath does not have it. These ethereals have it. They're not on her side. What's going on? And what I love here is that, like, we're fighting Xal'atath, but she is not this all-knowing master planner boss. She's great. She is outwitting us in many ways, but she's not, like, she's caught off guard. We've had multiple moments where we get to see her frustration and her responding poorly to things, right? She wants to come across as this master manipulator, but she's not as perfect as she thinks she is. And I think it just makes a way more interesting villain. I really do. I will say, I would have given this a 10 out of 10 storyline wise. However, there was a severe lack of feet in the cinematics this patch. I don't know if Blizzard caught our complaints last patch or something. So just want to put it out there.
Please stop. Just stop.
Dude, it was too funny though. It was too funny trying to count it, right? How many times did was it like 3 times? Like front and center on screen? Let's
just not talk about it. Anyways, I'm glad that the lore is kind of pulling together. I'm not a lore nerd, but I'm glad that it was able to tickle your fancy, if you will.
It's always good.
So we got a couple more things. We don't have a ton of time to touch on them.
I think we can touch on.
But
let's do the first two on that list. I think they'll be more interesting, and we can be quick because we got some good questions coming in too.
Yeah.
Dude, so I think you took a look today at the player housing announcement.
I did.
Yo, thoughts? Give me your thoughts.
I think it's a lot more. I said before, I think there was two ways that they could take it. I said they could take it very general, and I think I would be okay with that. Or they could take it very detailed, and I think I might be a little less okay with that, but I'd still be okay with it. And I think they're definitely taking the detailed path. And the only reason I'm not as okay with that is because it's like, okay, how much time is it going to take for me to, decorate my house? Like, are they going to have like a blanket decoration that I could just be like, oh, hey, this is the theme that I want, and it's going to like auto decorate it for me? But there's definitely the ability to have a lot of customization, which is good, right? I'd rather have the ability to have the customization and never use it than not to have the ability, right? But if everything is like, oh, you got to pick and choose where everything goes, I'll be like, okay, like perfect, like it's great, but I might not spend as much time doing it as other people will. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's why it's good, though. I actually think that's really why it's good.
No. Yeah.
Because if I went in and it was like, hey, here's the chair spot. Which chair do you want in the chair spot? Here's your bed spot. Which bed do you want in the bed spot? I feel like, right, like I'd go in, I'd set it up, and I would never return. I'd never walk in.
Yeah, and you would never go to other people's, right?
No,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it. And that's the garrison problem, right? The problem with the garrisons is garrisons became good because they gave you power. And that's why you saw me be so adamant that I don't want any power tied, any kind of power. Doesn't matter if it's crafting power, farming power, whatever, pet battling power. I don't care. I don't want any power tied to the player housing, because then all of a sudden it becomes very boring. It becomes very, very boring. Instead, I think they turned player housing. Dude, I think they created an entire game mode. They just made what I would call an entire game mode. This is literally Sims in WoW. Maybe not without the characters, right? Animal Crossing or Hello Kitty Island Adventure might be better examples. But you're literally going in, and there's a grid form where you can just go in and place things on grid, or you can go in advanced mode with no grid and like really detail things, shrink things down, scale them up bigger, design things. I want it to be at a point, Chicken, where I can be scrolling through TikTok, and I would see tutorials on how to make something for your player housing, right? Yeah. This is how I made a PS5 Pro in World of Warcraft, right?
Right,
like,
you're right.
I want to see that kind of crap show up. And you know what? If somebody never wants to touch their player housing, if somebody's like, yo, I don't care, don't want to do it, whatever, fine, cool, awesome, right? Like, and if somebody else is like, no, the only content in the game I like is going out and farming stuff for my player housing, I'm okay with that too. We had talked on the podcast. The one thing I want to be careful of, I love prestige prestige rewards. I love prestige rewards. However, I think prestige rewards should remain things like mounts, like transmog, right? I don't think prestige rewards should be stuff for your player housing. And what I mean by that is it shouldn't be like, yo, you want this really sick wallpaper for your home? You have to go and kill mythic Gallywix, right? Or even heroic Gallywix. I'd be like, no, that's not, because the players who will be most excited for player housing, now I think everybody's gonna be excited, but I think there will be a group of players who really commit to player housing as their main way to play the game. They don't want to do that, right? Like they just want to decorate their home, right? Like even like thinking like, dude, like seeing player housing, I could 100% see my fiance getting into WoW and never going into a raid, never going into an M+ dungeon, but just sitting there all day long designing this beautiful home, right? And then just wanting to show off home. And even like as chat said, right? Like I'm looking forward to farming for new things to decorate our houses, right? And maybe some crafting items too, right? I could see that going out. Now, what I would say for prestige items, I think trophies and stuff they might be kind of lame. I think cool, but lame. What I would do rather than trophies is I would have small prestige items right? So like, let's say you kill Mythic Gallywix or Heroic Gallywix. Let's say Heroic, right? For this case, you kill Heroic Gallywix, and you get like either his hat or his cane that you could put in your player housing, kind of as like a little trophy item, right? I don't mind trophy items, but not like a trophy that just says Gallywix on the bottom of it, right? Or Gallywix's face in gold, right? But I'd rather have it be something subtle, like, oh, hey, look, Gallywix's hat is over there sitting on the shelf. That guy got, AOTC back in whatever, right? Yeah. Items that aren't really true decorative pieces, right? Things that are very clearly just knickknacks that were acquired as a result of something prestigious. I'm okay with that because they're meant to be displayed to show off something that you did. But if it's like, this cool bookshelf can only be gotten if you killed Gallywix on Heroic, then okay, that's kind of lame. That's kind of lame. And I wouldn't mind them retroactively going back. I talked about this on stream today. I wouldn't mind them going back to old zones and being like, let's use Grizzly Hills. I love Grizzly Hills back in Wrath, right? And let's say they go either complete all the quests in Grizzly Hills or do like 30 quests or something, right? I don't know. I don't know what it would be, right? But some type of thing where you do enough in Grizzly Hills that you unlock like a Grizzly Hills aesthetics pack.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, oh, hey, you got the log cabin wallpaper, and now when you're in your house, the Grizzly Hills theme music can play in the background if you want, right? Like that kind of stuff. I think that would be really cool. Again, the player who I think will be most excited for player housing and make the most out of it are the people not doing the prestige content. They're people that are just want a cozy game to play, and getting to go back and do some like old farming content might be the answer to that. Anyways, I think that would be cool though. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah,
I'm hyped.
No, I think the first look we got is definitely reassuring. Like it's not like, okay, this is gonna be like gimmicky, right?
No, it
like
looks
the first
so
look we got.
good.
Yeah, definitely. It's gonna be something that I would definitely say that people. I mean, I'm gonna spend time doing it. Like definitely.
Dude, this surpassed my expectations. It was actually much better than I thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, no, I think I might agree with that. Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, more on player housing when more stuff comes out. I like talking about player housing because it is a huge thing that's going to come to the game.
Yeah.
And it's really one of those things where I feel like it's just going to be like a make or break. Like it's really just going to be like, oh, it's going to make like WoW for a lot of people, or it's just going to like be like a total waste of time.
Dude,
This is very reassuring that it's going to make WoW for a lot of people.
Hot take. Yeah, I think it's very reassuring. It's not stupid like Garrisons, right? It looks wonderful.
Yeah.
Hot take. I actually think player housing, if they continue the course that they're on now, from what we saw, I think player housing has the potential to not only bring players back to WoW, I think it actually has a lot of potential to bring a lot of new players into WoW.
Yeah,
because again,
I agree with that.
You can create such good social media content with player housing that non-WoW players would see on their feed and be like, yo, that game looks awesome, right? People who just want a cozy game. Think about how many cozy gamers will look at player housing or somebody just decorating their home in WoW and just be like, yo, that's amazing. No other game offers me that. Now, obviously other games do, right? Like you have Sims and stuff like that, but maybe they're tired of that. And who doesn't want a game where that has that level, that detailed level of like design in your own home space, while simultaneously having a massive player base of people who would be willing to come and look at your player house, right? That you can show it off.
Yeah.
So it kind of has the best of both, right? It's not single player, and I believe from what I understand now, your Warband can but isn't forced to share the same home, correct? So like I believe that's
sure.
Unless that changes, I believe that's correct. I think. I don't know. I could be wrong. We'll find out. But if that's the case, you could, right? You could say, oh no, if you love player housing and that's your favorite thing to do, well, guess what? You can just make alts on alts on alts on alts and have so many different themes and designs for your player housing. So I just think it's cool. And that wasn't the only big announcement this week. We got another announcement, Chicken, that you're the one who reached out to me about it. And when I read it, I remember seeing you because you were like, yo, dude, we should go to BlizzCon together. I want to go together. We should go. And I remember reading it and being like, oh, dang it, dude. Does Chicken not realize they're probably never doing BlizzCon again? Like I should tell him, right? Because they didn't do a BlizzCon this year.
Like this nerd.
Right, they didn't do a BlizzCon this year.
Nerd.
Microsoft bought them out. Microsoft does their own kind of convention thing. They're not gonna want Blizzard to do BlizzCons anymore, right? Like there's no way on earth they're gonna want Blizzard to do BlizzCon. And I'm like, D Chicken, I don't think they're doing. I don't think they're doing another one.
Nerd.
And then you like send me back a link to a BlizzCon announcement. And I was like, what the dude? I was so hyped, bro. I can't even express how hyped I was when I saw that. I want to go so bad. Depends on finances, but like, dude.
Hey, start playing now, dude. You got plenty of time to start playing.
No. I already have. The problem is I'm trying to just get past a wedding right now, and then
that's fair. I'll give you that.
Then figured out married life, right? But
yeah, right.
But man, right? Like, how fun would it be to go? I know even the guildies have been talking about like maybe like a guild house for the weekend or something. And so, so like, dude, just think about how crazy though, like it is to have that chance. Because I don't know, to me that just blew my mind that like I've wanted to do this since like high school, right? Since like I was in high school, and I've never gone. Every year I've had a reason why I can't go. Either I just wasn't playing well at the time, didn't have the finances to go. And you know what? And the last time I ended up not going. I almost went the last time there was a BlizzCon, and then for whatever reason, I ended up choosing not to go. Maybe because I didn't think there'd be anybody there that I knew that year, and I just was nervous to go by myself. And and I remember just regretting it so much. I regretted it so much. But it also sounds like they want to do it above and beyond, because it sounds like the last couple BlizzCons kind of went downhill a little bit. And they seem to acknowledge that a bit in their post and want to do more. So I'm curious what that more looks like, what's going to look like, what announcements they have. But yeah, all that to say, dude, I'm hyped. I'm so freaking hyped.
Okay.
Dude, we got some listener questions though. Some coming in live from the chat right now as we're recording. And some of it is, pre posted on our Discord. So if you ever want to have questions for the podcast, you can always post them on our Discord in the Pod Questions channel. There's a link in the description for Discord. Chicken, I'm going to toss you the first question. I'll read it and then let you take a second and think about it.
Sure.
But it's from Raxorak saying, question for the pod. WoW has so many ways for players to engage with it. From raiding, dungeons, delves, farming rare drops, trade scaling, PvPing, the list goes on. We could also include player housing now. Looking to the future, would you prefer to see the development team continue to improve and advance on the core functionality of those things, or would you rather see them invest in adding new ways to engage with the game? If you were to pitch a thinking outside the box addition to the game, what would it be?
So, I mean, I think they're always going to have to put time into the core functionality of the game. Like raid is always going to be there. They always got to continue raid. Mm-hmm. PvP, I think more than dungeons actually too. Like I think if it's gonna rank something, raid is always gonna be like the top priority for WoW, like 100%. PvP I think would be the second, and I think third is probably dungeons. Just because at the end of the day, a dungeon is basically just like a smaller raid, right? So right. To an extent, right? But if we're talking about those three cores, like they're always gonna have to put time in that. And preferably, I kind of think I would rather them just do that. Like, I really think, and to be honest, I don't think it's always going to be a full 100%. I think it's going to be a split.
Yeah.
If it's 75-25, like, hey, we're going to spend like 75% of our time improving what's going on right now, right? And then we'll spend 25% of our time working on what we think is the next best thing for this game.
Yeah.
And that brings up a lot of questions. Hey, are delves going to continue outside of the War Within? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is Mythic Plus going to continue the way it is outside of the War Within? I don't know. Raid most likely will. PvP most likely will. In different scenarios, right? But when it comes down to it, is I would prefer the content that is currently in the game that I enjoy doing take the grunt of what investment I'm putting into the game, right?
Yeah. Well, it's tricky because if they do it wrong and they put too much time into something that's not good,
Yeah,
then
right.
it just made the game worse, right? I think delves are that question, right? And I think delves are fine. I think delves are here to stay. My gripe with delves is the reward they give, not the content themselves. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
I think the content's
that's kind of
fine.
a hot take, though.
Yeah, I think the content's fine. I think a lot of people love delves. I think there's a lot of players that love delves. I just think the rewards are not equivalent to other content, right? So like you're getting rewards from other content that would be significantly harder to get in that content, right? So like in a delve, you're getting gear that again in other content you wouldn't be able to get because it's just easier in a delve to do. So that's my complaint with delves is more the reward, not the content itself. What I will say is if you were to ask me, say, what would you add? I couldn't tell you. Now, having had the conversation we just had, I do think player housing is the next thing. I think player housing is the next major gameplay mode. I would say player housing is a game mode. The next major game mode in WoW, because it is something that you can just sit and just do on end and have endless fun doing it. Just the way they've designed it has made it endless fun, right? Because you just get so stinking. It reminds me of back in the day, like with Tony Hawk, right? Like I used to love playing Tony Hawk games where you make your own maps, and it would be like, okay, you can place 500 objects on this map, and then you just sat there and creatively tried to place them in whatever ways you could. It reminds me of that, or Halo with the Forge or whatever they call it.
Oh yeah, right.
Stuff like that. I think Sims, Animal Crossing. Dude, how much time? Dude, Chicken, be honest with me. How much time has your wife put into her house on Animal Crossing?
Oh, ton of time, dude.
Dude, now you can convert that time into WoW time. Think about that.
Oh my gosh.
Think about that, dude. Think about Saturday night dates. Wait, no, you guys were Monday nights. Monday night dates with the wife, decorating your player housing. Goodness. Yeah, think about that. Think about that. But anyway, I think player housing is the next thing.
Question.
The comment that I want to make real quick before we move on to the next question is that M Plus was one of those things that was a new addition into WoW, right? And I think M Plus, right? Again, if you had asked players back in WoD what the next game mode should be for WoW, they'd probably be like, what do you mean? It's dungeons and raids and PvP. Dungeons, raids, PvP, right? But M Plus, I think M Plus was one of the biggest saving graces for WoW. I think WoW would be I don't want to say dead, but I think WoW would be a lot smaller than it is now without M Plus. I think M Plus added so much more vitality to World of Warcraft.
Yeah, no, I think it did too.
Yeah. We've got another question coming in from the chat. So here's a live question coming in from the chat. By the way, Sweet Dude is saying, Chicken, that you gotta start setting the hook now with your wife to get her into player housing.
Yeah, really.
All right, coming in from Kali in the chat. He says, question for the pod. Recount a time in WoW when things looked bleak, but miraculously you clutched up and won. Can be PvE or PvP content. PvE or PvP content when you've clutched up. I'm gonna be honest, it happens, especially as like a tank. Especially as a tank, it happens too much for me to actually remember the individual moments, right? Like it just, there's too much that, like, I can think of raids where there's like 3 of us left. I'm trying to think if there's any raid like that this season. There was one raid that we killed it right as the enrage timer was starting, like maybe 3 or 4 seconds into the enrage timer. That was pretty clutch. I don't remember which boss it was. I just remember it happening. But usually it's like M+. Like usually I'm in M+, and everybody's dead, and I am just and I have like a pack of like 12 on me, and I'm doing everything I can to hold them before everybody gets back. And I'm just like, dude, those are the moments. That's part of the reason why I love M+. Is it's just so unpredictable. But also it can be saved, right? Sometimes with raid, half your raid team dies, and it's like, okay, that's it. Like you can't do nothing with this. But M+, it just is different. It's a different dynamic, and so those clutch moments I find happen a lot in M+. Or you like overpull. Yes. Dude, the big one you overpull. Sorry. Dancing Rune Weapon when you overpull and it's huge pack. And you're just going crazy, pairing everything. And then Slappy Hands becomes available and you're slapping everything. Oh my gosh.
Just slapping.
That's when you feel
your
clutch,
wife,
right?
Your mother.
Yeah, dude. You slap them all. Right. And because you go from this moment of thinking, I'm a wipe. And then all of a sudden, like, you pulled 4 more packs than you should have. and that healer, dude, your healer is just clutching it like crazy. And somehow, like, the whole group makes it through, and you're just like, yeah, like those moments, dude, M+. It's always M+ for the team for those moments. What about you, Chick? Any kind of similar?
To be honest, it's kind of like the same thing, but there's one that really comes to mind.
Okay.
It was when I was playing my rogue, and I was doing this thing, and it just really sucked. Like, it was the worst, and I just felt like I just wasn't getting anywhere. So I quit playing WoW because I thought it was a garbage game. But then you accidentally bought me Shadowlands, and by accidentally, I mean you purposefully bought me Shadowlands, and I ended up... Okay, let me rephrase this. You purposely bought me like the deluxe edition of Shadowlands.
Yeah, with the level boost,
that came with a level 50 level increase, and I friggin' made it DK, and then I started playing the game, and here I am.
Dude, rogues are hard to start on like your first character. They're complicated.
Dude. You should, I'm telling you, make a guide one of these days on best characters to play as a... I
should do that. That would be a pretty good video.
As a new person to WoW.
All right, we got a question coming.
Dude, low key, I think that is like one of the hardest things, and I think that might be some of the reason why people stop, because it's like they just picked the wrong character. Like, they're like, oh, I'm gonna make my first character to play on this MMO a mage, and dude, as someone that's played WoW for a long time, you hear that, you're like, ugh. No, don't do that.
Yeah, Mage is hit or miss. Mage is a little hit or miss. It's doable. You can tell Mage is one of Blizzard's preferred specs, and a lot of people start on Mage. A lot start on Mage. But Mage is definitely... Playing good Mage can be a little tricky. I don't think... I think very intentionally, the people who main Mage that I know are also... unironically some of the best players I know.
Oh yeah, there's
right. Yeah. There's kind of a correlation there. But right, you look at Rogue and you're like, oh, dude, I love playing the sneaky class in Skyrim. Let me play a Rogue, right? And you're like, oh, this is horrible. I hate. Now, if you're good at Rogue, that's different, right? Rogue can do crazy things. WoW is that way where it has the myriad of all specs are good, all classes are good. There's no bad class in WoW, except maybe Augmentation Evoker right now. But there's no bad class in WoW, right? And it's always changing. It's always fluctuating what's good and what's bad. But there are definitely specs that are easier to learn, right? And specs that are harder to learn, but maybe more rewarding. And in terms of just being fun, I think it's up to you to decide what is fun for you. Is simplicity fun, or is like complexity more fun? And I know it sounds crazy, but for a lot of people, being able to have something that feels like you're more engaged is more fun. Question coming in from Rasta. With all the changes in loot last season and now even more changes this season, do you think the rewards from Raid are keeping up? Raiding tends to require more out of the players, especially Heroic Mythic, and requires at minimum twice as many players as a dungeon does. You can pretty easily get Hero Track gear from running solo delves, but you need a full coordinated team to raid, and then you only get Hero Track from Heroic Raid, which is most definitely harder than a delve. Should raid rewards be improved to encourage continued engagement with them? The problem is you can't really improve raid rewards. Mythic track comes from Mythic. Hero Track comes from Heroic. Like, unless you add a whole new track, you can't, or say, hey, you know what, the last boss of Heroic drops Myth gear, right? Which I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, right? Because then you're getting Myth versions of the final boss loot, which would be bad.
Yeah.
So my answer to that would be, the issue isn't that Heroic needs or Raid needs better gear. The answer is everybody else needs to lower their gear. I mean, again, it's the same. I ranted about earlier on the podcast. Right now, +2s are dropping hero gear in the vault. That should not be a thing. We can lower that back down. Delves shouldn't be rewarding hero gear in the vault. That should be lowered because, again, way easier content. So I agree with and I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on that question. I agree with the sentiment that the gear doesn't keep up, but the answer is actually to lower rewards from other content. You just can't. You literally can't raise rewards for a raid. There's just no.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Yeah, it's hard too.
Yeah. All right. One last question for the pod, also coming in from Rack. Another question for the pod. Can you explain how to read parses from a raid log like I'm 5 years old? Like, pretend it's my first day in kindergarten, and while I'm at school, I overhear my teacher talking to her boyfriend, Johnny Awesome, and she says, "That was so much fun raiding in Warcraft with you last night, Johnny. I can't wait to do it again." And Johnny says, "Yeah, babe, but your DPS was trash, absolute garbage. Did you see your parses on the log? You weren't even green. You were in the gray, babe." And so I come home from school and tell my father about what I heard. I say, "Daddy Swag, what is a parse exactly, and what can my teacher, Mrs. Bentley, do to get her parse up so her boyfriend won't be so mean to her?" How would you explain that to 5-year-old me? Wow, that's a detailed question.
Dedication.
I love that. Dedication. I love that question. Oh my gosh! Please, can everybody write your questions in the future in such a manner?
That was dedication.
That is the most beautiful question I've ever gotten. Yeah. So I do know that X gave a quick answer to parses on our Discord. So he did give an answer there. So, but all X had brought up is that parses represent how well you perform DPS or healing wise or whatever, chart you're looking at compared to other players of the same spec, right? So, and we're gonna go a little bit more in detail because there's some thoughts I had after I read your question initially that I'd like to share to help maybe, not just what a parse is, but how can a parse be beneficial? But essentially what a parse is I'm a blood DK, right? So when I look at the damage done meter, right, and it says that I parsed a 50, right? Let's say my parse was a 50. That means I am I'm right at the exact average. I'm right at the exact average compared to other blood DKs. Now, when you look at your parses, parses are found on warcraftlogs.com, right? That when people talk about parses, that's what they're talking about. So usually somebody in your group is tracking logs, right? And so they'll track logs, and then those logs get uploaded to warcraftlogs.com. If you're running with a guild, usually there's a logs channel for that guild. And so that's where that will get posted. You can click the boss that you are fighting, and it'll pull up a summary. You can click damage done, or you can click healing, threat, whatever, right? We're going to talk about damage, though, in this case. Healing is the other one where you usually look at parse numbers. Although healing parses are kind of a joke because the higher your parse, it just means the more crap people stood in. So, sometimes a high healing parse is actually a really bad sign for the rest of the guild or the rest of the raid team, right? Okay. But looking at damage parses, right? So what you'll see is immediately to the left of your name, you'll see a number. I'm looking at one of mine right now. I parsed a 61 on a fight. What that means is of all blood DKs fighting that boss battle, I am in the top 39%, right? I'm in the top 39% of all blood DKs fighting in that battle with my damage output. Mm-hmm. If you parsed a 95, right, that means you're in the top 5%. Now, that's just what that number means. Now you also have colors, right? So think of colors the same way that you think of your gear progression, right? So you have gray, green, blue, purple, orange. Okay? So when somebody's like, oh, you have gray parses, that means your parse is in the gray color. Now, I believe a gray parse is anything below like a 25. I think 24 and down is gray parsing, I think, right? Gray parsing is not a good sign. It's not a good sign. If your parse is gray, it means that your performance is very low compared to everyone else who was doing that fight in the same spec as you. Because what you have to remember is not all classes and specs are balanced perfectly. So, like, Mage might just be naturally doing a lot more damage that season. Maybe not a lot more, but some more damage that season than Hunter. And so, instead of trying to compare yourself to the other players in your guild, you really want to compare yourself to your parses, right? Because your parses will tell a totally different story. So, for example, I'm looking at my guild's parsing from this week, right? And we have a warrior in our group who is like 5 levels below a bunch of our other DPS in damage, but his parse is actually higher than the 4 people above him, or the next 4 people above him, I should say, because there's more even above that, but higher than the next 4 people above him. So even though he technically did less damage than the next 4 people above him, he actually performed better as a player than those 4 people above him. Does that make right? So that parse is important because that just means that the spec he is playing maybe isn't the best outputting spec. Now, so to the left of your character, you have your initial parse, and then to the far right, you'll see another number, and that is your parse for your eye level if you're looking at Warcraft logs. And so that's just saying, okay, for all blood decays at the same eye level as you. Now, I think they do some math to try and figure that one out. So sometimes you might be like, oh, my parse is low, but my eye level parse is high. And what that means is that you're not doing a ton of damage, but your gear is also really low. And so sometimes if you're like going in and your gear is really low, don't look at the total parse, look at your eye level parse to get a better idea of how you're performing in that regard. What I will say for parses, and this is what I thought about, sorry, Chick, I know I've been talking about this for a minute.
Sure.
What I will say for parses, the importance of parses, and parses are important. Don't let anyone ever tell you parses don't matter or that they ruin the game. They do not. They absolutely do not ruin the game. Parses are information that you can use to improve, right? If you're looking at your parse and it's gray, the only one to blame is yourself. The only one to blame is yourself. But don't be mad. Don't be like, oh, dude, I suck. I'm terrible at this game. I'm horrible. Look at that number and be like, ooh, that is lower than I thought it would be. What can I do to improve? What can I do? There's a website, Warcraft Analyzer. It's great. You can literally just copy and paste the Warcraft logs link into that. And it will actually give you a rundown of like, oh, you didn't use this spell enough, or your uptime was this percentage. You can improve that, right? Like it will give you suggestions, like automated suggestions on what you can do. That's a great starting point. Also, watching people. Your parse should give you an indication of how you're performing overall, right? And use that. And by the way, though, you don't have to have a 100 parse. Some people will push for that, right? J-Rob, who was with us last night, I'm looking at our logs from the other night, he was pushing the 97 parse, right? I'm sure that dude is aiming everything he can to try and get a 100% parse for his damage.
Yeah.
I had a 61% parse. And you know what? I felt pretty content with that. I'm tanking. My bigger worry was more so just about living. I was just worried about living. I do want to fix up my damage rotation. I know I'm not using optimal talents right now for raid single target. I can improve that. But if your parse is low, right, take a look at the talents you're using. Take a look at your rotation. See how your uptime is doing. But your parse should be an indicator of things that you can look at, not a tool to degrade yourself. Does that make sense? It is a tool, though, to see where room for improvement can occur. Otherwise, you'll never know. Otherwise, you'll just never know, and you'll just continue to do the same things, thinking it's working, but having no clue if it actually is or isn't. So that's what parses mean to me and why I love them.
Good deal.
Chicken's like, yeah, that's about it. That's everything.
Yeah, that is parses.
Yeah, dude. All right, well, that's everything for the podcast this week. Guys, thank you so much for not only watching the pod live, but listening to it as well in your cars or at work or wherever you listen to the pod. This has been a particularly fun episode. Chicken, I'm so glad to have you back. It was fun with the guests last week, but dude, man, there's something special when you and I get to just sit and talk about the game that we love. I believe, Chicken, we are working on setting up a Patreon for the future, so you can keep an eye out for that. We'll probably post it first on Discord and then bring it up in a future episode of the podcast. And as well, we've been kind of mentioning, but if you run like a small company, especially marketing towards gamers of some kind, and you want to do a partnership with us, we would love to talk about that. You can reach out to us at warcraftpod@gmail.com, or that, not warcraftpod, warbandpod@gmail.com, warbandpod@gmail.com. We would love to talk with you about that. But that's everything for the podcast today. So, Chicken, do you want to send us out?
Sure. Yeah, it's been good. Thanks for listening, guys. And as always, we'll catch you somewhere in Azeroth.